Good evening, everyone. Good evening, everyone. We proceed each council meeting with a word of prayer and the Pledge of Allegiance. Please feel free to join us. Father in heaven, we thank you for your grace, your mercy, your goodness, your awesome power. We thank you for this great city, and we thank you for allowing us to be here in these positions. We just pray, Lord, your blessings upon those decisions tonight. These things we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We'll now call this meeting to order. Mr. Garrett, would you call the roll, please?
Mr. Grimes?
Here.
Mr. Pruitt?
Here.
Ms. Mel?
Here.
Mr. Ledbetter? Here. Ms. Smith?
Here.
Mr. Jones?
Here.
Ms. Ishby?
Here.
Mr. Hawkins?
Here.
Okay, you should have received copies of the December 10th, 2019 City Council minutes. Any corrections or changes or comments?
Make a motion to approve as submitted.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the minutes as submitted. If there is no further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0. I'd like to welcome Troop 6071 tonight. They are here getting their communications badges, so welcome. First up, we have our standing committee, which is community development, and I will turn this over to Mr. Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First item on this portion of the agenda is a resolution adopting organizational rules and procedures for the Conway City Council for calendar year 2020. And we have a resolution to read for this item. It's Resolution R2001.
Okay, this is just our yearly organizational rules. I would like to make mention that in Section 1, the part there it says January 2019, that should say January 2020. If you would correct that, please.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the resolution to approve the rules and procedures for the city council. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve nominations for the Public Facilities Board. And we have a resolution to be read for this. It's Resolution R2002. And this is, or is it 02? I'll hush.
And the people who have agreed to serve on this, Kim Williams, a 5-year term, Osmar Garcia, a 4-year term, Denise Perry, 3 years, Eric King, 2 years, and John Nabholz, 1 year.
Make a motion for the adoption of the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to
I
adopt.
have one question.
Yes, ma'am.
Maybe of Chuck. Denise Perry is also on the Conway Court Board. Is there any conflict with that?
I didn't know that. I'm not aware.
I don't think so.
Public facilities and,
Do you see a conflict?
okay.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that up, Ms. Mill.
No, she's a great person. Yeah. I think
We have a
she'll do
motion and a
good
second.
job.
Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 8-0.
Issues. She could abstain.
Yeah. I just didn't know if there was a,
Yeah, this will be for Hendricks, UCA, and CBC. Some of their interest. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve a transportation services agreement with the Boys and Girls Club of Faulkner County, Faulkner County Council on Aging, and the Independent Living Services. And we have a contract before us for $110,000 to provide these services January 1st, 2020 through December 31st of 2020. And I move that we enter into this transportation services agreement.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve this request. Any further discussion?
110 is for the Boys and Girls Club, 92 for Faulkner County Council on Aging, and 30,000 for Independent Living Services. I needed to put those other two in there as well.
That is correct. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins. Mr. Garrett.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 8-0. In your packets, A4 and A5 need to be switched in your agenda package.
Yeah, I saw that earlier.
Okay. Mr. Hawkins.
So we want to do 5 first, is that correct?
That is,
Yes?
should be 114 and 116 Gum Street. They may have gotten corrected.
Yeah, 5, correct.
Okay, we're good.
Okay, so do the Gum Street first, is that what you're asking? Okay, very good. We have, I don't have that switch, now I do. Consideration to approve offer and acceptance for property located at 1114 and 1116 Gum Street for the Community Development Block Grant Program. And hi, Kiera.
Hi, y'all.
What can you tell us about that? Happy New Year and welcome.
Happy New Year. So this is the first step in moving forward with securing the property for the emergency shelter, and it appraised at $165,000. Mr. Lev has already agreed to that price, and so I just need you guys' approval on the offer and acceptance
So
to move
moved.
forward.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this offer and acceptance for the property on Gum Street at the amount of $165,000. Any further discussion?
How much did we put in the CDBG plan for it?
200.
That's what I was thinking, there was a difference there.
Yeah. Any other discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 8-0. Thank you, Kiera. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance to approve the private club permit for O'Malley's Irish Grill, which is going to be located at 803 Harkriders, Suites 11 and 12. And joining us this evening is Mr. Adam Childers, who will represent the applicant on this. Mr.
Correct.
Childers.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm here on behalf of O'Malley's Irish Grill and the Schaffners. I'm an attorney out of North Little Rock. And I'm sure y'all probably don't want to hear me speak, so I was going to introduce Mr. Greg Schaffner. I believe he's a local city or business owner here in the city, so y'all may be familiar with him to get up and speak about the O'Malley's Irish Grill.
I don't do a lot of public speaking, so I'm sure y'all are used to that. But anyways, it's just it's an Irish American cuisine. We're trying to locate there in the old Blackwoods Euro location everybody's familiar with. It's been there, gosh, since I was in college. It's been there a long time. So we're trying to complement the city with like-minded restaurants to complement everybody else in the downtown area, to bring more in, have a very viable lunch menu for everyone. I mean, you know, lunch is a pretty big issue for downtown folks, but it's not a real big place, everybody knows, so it should be, it's just going to be a nice quiet little place, and that's what we're hoping for. Any questions? I mean, it's hard to explain what all it is. It's a restaurant. Everybody's familiar with restaurants.
When do you hope to be open?
We plan to, after we go through the liquor license process, to be open maybe before St. Patrick's Day.
Very good.
Good
I
time
don't,
to open.
I don't see opening
time
until you have everything in order.
Yeah,
Good.
So,
Look forward to it.
yeah, thank you.
make a motion, we waive the readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
I make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance, which would be 2001.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion?
It's the first ordinance of the year.
Yep.
It is.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Thank you, sir. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, we have resolutions requesting the Faulkner County Tax Collector place liens on some properties around Conway because of expenses incurred by the city. 2 of these places have paid their fees as of today. Those would be on the 2 listed on Hardy Street. So we have 4 other items or 4 other locations. The first is 36 Briar Springs Road in Conway. We have $178.76 that has been spent by the city to clean up that property. Is there a representative from anyone at 36 Briar Springs in Conway in attendance tonight? An owner or representative of an owner. 36 Briar Springs. I don't see anyone, Mr. Mayor, so want to do this as an individual
We can do it as a group. if you'd
resolution,
like
or
to, Mr. Hawkins.
do it as a group?
Yes, sir.
Group, okay. We also have a location on Prince Street at 2025 Prince Street. We've spent $373.77 to this point in time to clean up this piece of property. Is there an owner or representative of an owner of 2025 Prince Street with us this evening? Mr. Mayor, I don't see anyone from that location either, so we'll move to the third location, which is 1208 Davis Street. City has incurred $414.07 in cleaning up this property. Is there an owner or representative of an owner at 1208 Davis with us this evening? Mr. Mayor, I don't see anyone that's in attendance. And the fourth location is 3900 Tyler Street. The city has spent $789.15 in cleaning up this particular property. Is there an owner or representative of an owner from 3900 Tyler Street with us this evening? Mr. Mayor, I don't see anyone that's raising a hand, so with those four locations, do we need four separate resolution numbers on that, Mr. Garrett?
It'll be 03 through 06.
03 is Briar Springs, 04 would be Prince Street, 05 would be Davis, and 6 would be Tyler. And with those numbers attached to those resolutions, I move that we pass those resolutions with an affirmative vote.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve these properties located at 36 Briar Springs, the amount of $178.76, 2025 Prince, $373.77, 1208 Davis Street, $414.07, and 3900 Tyler Street, $789.15. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 8-0.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance amending the fees for the construction and alterations of buildings for residential and commercial fees for the Permits and Inspection Department. And
That one has been pulled, Mr. Hawkins.
That one is-
They're going to be gathering us some more information on that one.
Very good. Was not aware of that. Thank you very much. The next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance authorizing entering into an agreement for the Markham Square Water Quality Demonstration Project. And we have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 02002.
Mr. Walden will come speak to this. I think Mr. Walden's got some good news for us too on our building here in Conway. But this is what Shelley and Wes and I've been working on for some time with the community. There should be, each of you should have a handout. Kind of what we're wanting to do up there is actually very exciting. I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, so we have gone through an RFQ process to select design professionals to help with the design for the 319H grant, which we've received, which is a water quality demonstration project, detention, and then also the added bonus of a park. Through the selection process, we ended up going with SWA. You can see in there in those first few pages some of the examples of the work that they've done. One of the particular reasons why we selected them is their creativity and their sort of ability to build the identity of a place into the actual project and the design of the project. And so I felt like this was something that really needed to be led by landscape architects on that side and consulting overall with the team. You'll look towards the back of that packet. You've got some of the conceptual designs that we have for the Markham Square or potentially MLK Square concept. We additionally have an NEA grant that we have received, and so some of the housing structures that you see there, those are some products that have sort of initial products that we've gotten from the Unity Community Design Center with this. So open up to any questions.
This is the area we're talking about, the old scrapyard. You know, everyone's concerned about water detention. That was the original purpose there. This will still serve its water detention purpose. It's just much more aesthetically pleasing, and the community in that area is very excited about it.
Yeah, James came to the first meeting last night, and they were thrilled with the idea of working with a design firm. And I think what came out of it is they like the idea of making it making whatever design comes out fit to what was there, that there's that nod to history. We talked about it even with the ping pong tables. There's one that shows the cement ping pong tables that have dolphins in it. Well, maybe ours would have anvils in it because of Matson's garage, which was originally a blacksmith shop. So just have little things like that. So they're working on research. That's the biggest thing. Pictures and stories and all of that. So it was a good meeting, good first organizational meeting.
Make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes 8-0. I'm sorry, any opposed? Have to give that? Passes 8-0.
Move for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Miss Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Miss Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Miss Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye. Passes 8-0. And what was that text or email you sent me?
So I had sent you a text. For the last few years, a lot of the development community has been very concerned about comparing Conway down to Saline County and the Benton Bryan area because of the comparable sizes. In the last year, Conway, in terms of new single family starts, we've gone from being 4th in the region when you consider that joined pair of Benton and Bryant to being 2nd. And so our single family starts last year, sharing good news from the permits department, was 267. That is the highest number since 2007.
Wow.
And so that's a 30% increase over last year. So that's substantial. We had about 744 lots that have been created in the last 2 years. So if you calculate all of the lots that were created from 2011 to 2017, there are more lots that have been built in the last 2 years. So obviously lot creation is an indication of where you would see single-family building permits going. And so I would expect likely for us to have another increase in 2020. If we don't, then that's also a positive sign because that might mean that land prices are going down with that. So it's good either way as that stands. So, and again, that lot number creation that we had last year was the highest since 2007. So in a lot of ways, development in Conway has been, we were at a very high point, 2004, 2005, 2006. When the Great Recession came along, we took a pretty hard hit, but we have really been steadily coming back, and we're now to where I think we're close to the levels where we used to be. So it's very positive news.
Thank you, James.
Thanks.
Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance accepting and appropriating donation funds for the Conway Tree Board and Arbor Day. We have an ordinance to read for this. There's $200 that's been donated. We have an ordinance. It's ordinance 02003.
Make a motion for the waiving of the 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second?
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Miss Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Miss Mel?
Aye.
Miss Isby? Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is an ordinance accepting and appropriating funds from Faulkner County for GIS per the interlocal agreement. This appears to be an accounting situation, amount of $14,000. And we have an ordinance to read for this item. It's ordinance 02004.
Make a motion, we waive the 3 readings.
Second?
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
Move for adoption of the ordinance.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Miss Mel?
Aye.
Miss Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Miss Isby?
Yes.
Passes 8-0. Mr. Hawkins.
Next item, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve a conditional use permit to allow a self-storage facility in a C2 zoning district for about 7 acres comprised of portions at 2890 Meadow Lake Road and 2505 Salem Road. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission at their meeting on December 16th of 2019, and at that time, the commission voted 8-0 that the request be forwarded to City Council with a recommendation of approval with conditions, and there are 11 of those, and they have to do with stuff that we see all the time, fencing and lighting and tree canopies, and there are 11 of them. They're all right there, and you can check them out, see what you've got. No storage of petroleum products,
This one.
in case you're interested
Maybe
in
the
that. No
address still that
storing
same.
of hazardous chemicals or explosives. Thought those were two dandies. So with that, James, would you like to talk?
Yeah, this is at the northwest corner of Meadow Lake and Salem. This site previously had a conditional use permit for an assisted living facility. They ran into some sewer issues because of the topography in that location. So that's why you're seeing now a storage facility. They store things, don't really need sewer in that location. A lot of the concerns that we looked at in order to make this appropriate was making sure that there was a proper amount of screening to the residential areas that are surrounding. So it's one of those types of uses that are you see a lot of demand for today, but it's also convenient to have near neighborhoods because people have a lot of stuff. So
Is it usually in industrial zoning is what is by right for these? For
you can do it by right in C3.
Yeah,
Oh, you can?
C3
Yeah.
you can.
Yeah, originally the applicant had requested C3, and we were slightly concerned about granting C3, just simply because
What else could go
what
there?
else might go there if this fell through, and so we directed the applicant, or actually we, on the previous rezoning, we made a recommendation for C2, and so the Planning Commission voted, and y'all approved C2 on that. So.
Would it ever go back and be, just a question for me, would it ever, after it's built, would we ever go back and rezone it C3 and just have it C3, or would it always stay C2 conditional use?
I would recommend it always say C2, and the reason being is, let's say that there's an expansion or something along those lines, then we again can re-review that and make sure that it's happening or the redevelopment or the expansion occurs in a way that's complementary to the neighborhood.
One other thing I noticed in the conditions, Mr. Hawkins pointed out a few about hazardous chemicals and petroleum, and I'm guessing that's safety related. I noticed there was a few other things here about welding equipment being operated in kilns and other things that might cause fires. So I'm guessing the fact that we had to list these means that they're not already prohibited in storage units around town?
I had written some storage unit standards for another community, and I noticed that we didn't have them in our zoning code, and so I said, you know what? They probably are overkill, but it's good to have it in there.
Most places you rent from have a list of guidelines that.
I mean, they don't want their
And they don't
place
want any
being
of
they
these
don't
things
want
in
any
there.
of this stuff.
So you have to agree
Now,
to really all these and
assuming they're
more.
reputable,
Yeah.
and most are, but,
Yeah.
okay. Do we need some more standards? I mean,
Or do we need to create?
Yeah.
do we?
I think there's some
I think-
standards that we could create. Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Would be good.
Some
That would
additional
include
ones.
probably
Yeah.
these, yeah.
I make a motion, we grant this conditional use permit.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this, this conditional use permit with the 11 of them, Mr. Hawkins?
That's correct.
11 conditions?
There are 11 listed.
Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
It's 8-0.
One thing I did notice on here were times of when it can be open and closed. Most of them are like early in the morning till 10 at night. So it's not disruptive to any of the people that live around there.
Typically, I mean, they're really secure facilities,
Yeah.
and so you have a code.
It's more like
But
self-service.
I'm thinking about people
Yeah.
coming in and out, surely that won't happen in the late night hours.
Uh,
Yeah.
As somebody that has used one previously, there's been times where it's like, it's 12 o'clock at night, and that's the only time I have to move something,
Oh.
and so it's happened.
You'll be
Never gone that way, so I just wondered.
But
Thank you.
one of our other main concerns really was people using it to operate a business out
Yeah,
of.
right.
again, speaking on personal experience, when I had a one of these units down in Little Rock, it was neat, but I always encountered a guy that was always working on his old Camaro, and it was cool, but it's like it's not really the purpose of what
Right.
you have that for, is to operate a garage.
Mr. Hawkins.
Anything else of Mr. Walden before?
I think he's up on the next one, too.
We're good? Okay, very good. Next item is a ordinance to rezone 3.29 acres, give or take a little. Located in the 100 block of Hogan Lane, the current zoning is A1, the proposed zoning is O2. This was reviewed by the Planning Commission on December 16th of 2019, and they voted 8-0 to send this to City Council with a recommendation of approval. We have an ordinance to read for this one. It is ordinance O2005.
Correct.
Thank you.
Make a motion that we waive 3 readings.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8-0.
So this rezoning from going from A1 to O2, the O2 zone, essentially what that enables are office-type uses and some light retail as conditional use. And looking at the area, the sort of the Hogan corridor transitions to down more intensely commercial towards the south, and then there is some office zoning that's up to the north. It's actually some of the better examples of really compatible office structures that fit within a neighborhood type environment, ones that are designed like residential structures in a way. And so we felt like in reviewing this that the O2 zone was probably as intense as that area needed to have currently. 30 years down the road, you know, this might be a higher zone like C2 or C3 as more traffic picks up and there might be more road connections, because the Hogan Lane corridor is intended long range for the Western Arterial Loop connection. So, and looking at that.
Very good.
Have you made a motion to waive the readings?
Yeah, we've already
Did.
waived the 3 readings.
Make a motion for adoption.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
That's 8-0. What number is that?
That was 02005.
And Mr. Hawkins.
And final item here, Mr. Mayor, is consideration to approve a conditional use permit to allow retail restricted church, restaurant, eating place, drugstore, pharmacy in the OT district located at the 100 block of Hogan Lane. And James, I'm going to say that you're going to tell us what this one's all about too, since it's the same piece of dirt.
It is the same piece of dirt. So the applicant for the rezoning was wanting to, they're wanting to market the property, and so they don't have specific designs, and so we gave them sort of the option of pursuing a conditional use, but it's a bit in a tiered way of being a conditional use. One of the conditions resulting from this is that when there are designs, that it would be re-reviewed by the Planning Commission, and the Planning Commission can then impose additional conditions on the use at that time. One of the uses that they requested was retail restricted, which it's in our zoning code is one of those nested type uses. There's several uses that are listed below that, and so there's reasons why, and the conditions that we specifically eliminated. Drive-through restaurants, novelty stores, video stores were ones that were excluded.
Make a motion to grant this conditional use permit.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve this request. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 8-0. Thank you, Mr. Walden. Thank you, Mr. Hawkins.
Mr. Mayor, before Mr. Walden sits down, I don't know how many of y'all know this, but Mr. Walden is available for playing tuba at your next party if you would like for him to do that. Would you agree to that, Mr. Walden?
I don't know if I have the chops anymore.
Do you have the tuba is the question.
I don't have a tuba.
I just found out today Mr. Walden was a member of the University of Arkansas marching band and was a tuba player.
Oh, wow. Cool.
All right.
Little known facts.
So you've been up and down those bleachers a few times, haven't you? Thank you. Next up is our Public Service Committee, and our first item there is a resolution accepting the bid for building improvements at the recycling center for the Department of Sanitation. Ms. Jamie Bryce.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We received a total of five bids for this project, and this is adding a compressor as well as an extension of the recycling center, and we're asking you to accept the bid from Shields and Associates.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the bid for the building improvement for the Department of Sanitation. Any further discussion?
Doesn't appear to be the low one.
It is not. We looked on the Arkansas Contractors Licensing Board.
Okay.
We have had the lowest bid do some contract work for us in the past, and we are recommending Shields and Associates.
And we have stuff on file that
Yes, sir.
would back up the reason
Yes, sir.
that you're, thank you very much.
Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett.
Resolution R2007. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 8-0.
Thank you.
Next up, we have a resolution accepting the lowest bid for demolition of the structures along Sugar Creek.
Right, this is with the hazard mitigation grant, and we're working with FEMA and the Arkansas Department of Emergency Management on this project. And we're just asking you to accept the lowest bid.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the lowest bid for the demolition of these structures on Sugar Creek. This is finally moving along, and I appreciate all y'all's hard work on that. Any discussion?
Are these the ones that have been used for a burn?
Yes.
By our fire department
Yes, sir.
recently? Good, very good. I guess we've gotten all the use out of them we can get.
Not yet, they're still training right now, so we're working with the contractor on that, or we will.
And you've recommended,
Flooded over to them, yeah.
which one?
Wow.
I'm sorry, the lowest bid from Seward's Contracting Services for $40,000.
Good.
Lot less. It's called Sowers.
Mr. Garrett.
For like-
The R2008. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Passes 8-0.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Next up, we have consideration to approve entering into a contract extension with the Arkansas Department of Human Services for the Parks and Recreation Department. Mr. Ibbotson.
Mr. Fun.
This is the property due north of Curtis Walker Park and abutting Museum Road. It's roughly 50 acres. I think in front of you you've got a conceptual drawing of what we could do with the property. In soccer, you know what the difficulties are with our current soccer park. So that's one idea for the property and one that we'd like to see happen. This is just an amended contract with the state that we already have for Dono and all the property there at Dono, and including the rodeo arena, Curtis Walker Park, and then this property to the north of it, and it expires in 2063.
Make a motion to waive the 3 readings.
No, this is not an ordinance.
Not an ordinance.
I'll take a motion to approve this contract extension.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and second to approve the contract extension with the Arkansas Department of Human Services. I'll not be here in 2063.
Yeah, I
It turns out.
will we?
Nor
That's what
will
we were
I.
saying.
We'll be taking care of this, Mr. Ibbotson, at that time.
No.
Any other discussion? Mr. Garrett.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed.
Thank you.
Thank you. It passes 8-0. In our new business, we have an ordinance authorizing the levy and collection of a fine for jail costs at the Faulkner County Jail, and we will turn this over to Mr. Clausen.
Well, this has kind of been an ongoing issue for for several months now. And kind of the short story is, in an effort to curb overcrowding and inadequate facilities with the county jail, the Faulkner County was seeking additional sources of dedicated revenue for that purpose. You know, they obviously are running 2 facilities. There's a maximum security facility and a juvenile facility combined in one over here downtown. They refer to that as Unit 1. and then the larger detention facility that is not a maximum security facility located on German Lane by one of our baseball parks. They had a couple different options legally that they could do. Obviously, there's always the option of them to look at a dedicated tax, which they opted not to. But also there was a per diem fee that they could charge anyone that any municipality or government entity that brought in prisoners or detainees. They could charge them a per diem, so a cost per day per inmate for housing that particular detainee in their facility. There was also an option to increase jail fees. So with every citation that is written right now, seatbelt ticket, speeding ticket, whatever the ticket may be, there is a county jail fee of $20 that is collected. And that's collected in Greenbrier, it's collected in Conway, Valonia, you name it. If a citation is written in the city, that $20 is collected.
Regardless of whether you go to jail?
Regardless of whether you go to jail. You hopefully will never see inside of a jail, but you still have to pay that fee to maintain that facility in the county. There's another fine that can be in addition to that county jail fine called a city jail fine. And it can be up to $20 as authorized by the city council. This body had authorized a $5 city jail fine many, many years ago. And that fine has been collected and then remitted to the county on a monthly basis for as long as anybody can remember, basically. But that's $5. It can be up to $20. A few months ago, the county decided to basically seek per diem expense, which would, in essence, mean anybody that brought in particular, have to do with Conway. Anybody that brought in, if Conway Police Department, Jody, step in, Chief, step in if you need to help me out here. But if we arrested somebody and put them over there until they were charged with a felony or sentenced on a misdemeanor, then they were considered a city prisoner. And then they would be, or we would be responsible, according to the county, for $44 a day for that particular detainee. That would add up quickly. That ordinance was passed by the Quorum Court, but they gave the cities in the county, so you're looking everywhere from Damascus, Valonia, Greenbrier, Guy, Conway, I'm sure I missed one, but Valonia, yes, the option to raise their city jail fine to the $20, full $20, and then remit that on a monthly basis. So what I've put before you is an interlocal agreement with the county that in essence says that if we raise our city jail fee to the full $20, they will accept that in lieu of the per diem.
Which would be 44.
And that's all gonna come out of the citations.
That all comes off of citations. It basically spreads the cost and expense of running the jail, which we do not have a jail, so we can collect that city fee and then remit it to the facility that does the housing, and then of course that's run by the county. But yes, that comes off every speeding ticket, every seatbelt ticket. Any citation that's written, basically that fine is associated with that citation. And potentially be collected and then remitted to the county.
Are we ever reimbursed the money that is written in the course of a fine? So let's say it's a speeding ticket's $150. Is that 20 that we're being charged because somebody got charged, and maybe a speeding ticket's not a good
Well, so
use?
if somebody pays $150 for a speeding ticket,
The $20 is in there.
the $20 is in that amount.
It's in there, okay.
If you want to get accurate, speed tickets are 170, 190, depending on the speed.
Okay.
But, citations are extremely expensive. The benefit to the city is that if you agree to enter into this agreement, the cost that the county is looking for is on the citation, and it's budget neutral basically for the city.
Okay.
Otherwise, we're going to be responsible for $44 a day for everybody that sits over there until
That's
they're
why,
charged with a
that's why I
felony.
was asking what I was asking.
If we do this, there's no way they can go back and say that they want to do the
So,
44, right?
per this agreement, that is correct. They can't for 1 year. This is an annual agreement, and it's probably, and I'm gonna be honest with you, it's something you're gonna have to look at in a year. Because running a jail is expensive, and the counties obviously had to make some tough budgetary decisions, and this is a source of revenue that they may want to see. Jody and I have done, Chief Spradlin and I have done a lot of work over the last several months in working with other cities, their mayors, their city attorneys, and their chiefs of police, and then of course with the county, in communication with the county, to work this particular arrangement out, so you at least have the option, because this could potentially be hundreds of thousands of dollars per year, because we arrest a lot of folks.
I think this is something we probably need to do at this time. I think we all need to look for some longer-term solutions down the road, including trying to find a way not to put so many people in the jail to start with. Some people do need to be there, but there are some people that don't, and that'd be one way to lower everybody's costs.
We do have some options there, so.
In going through this process, worked with Chief Spradlin and some of his majors and lieutenants. They've got some, I think, pretty interesting ideas on the ways that we can cut back on that, on detention. I know that the district court, talking specifically Judge Carnahan, he's putting in some new policies. I think there was an article in the paper most recently, getting people out of jail into treatment a little bit quicker, having quicker court dates. And so there's a lot of things that we can do where people won't sit in jail for any longer than they absolutely have to. Part of it's the system, though. If they're arrested and they have a bond, if they can't make bond, then they will remain in custody. So we're working through those things. We do have ideas. This is maybe a Band-Aid for the time being, but it's a better option than the per diem. Because, like I said, it potentially could be quite a bit of money.
Chuck, is that cost added to what they owe at the end? I mean, like their bond that they have to pay, to get out? I mean, do we add that cost to that bond? We can't
No,
get
ma'am.
out?
There are some.
To recoup some of that money is what I'm thinking.
Doesn't go to them.
Sounds like we're just fronting them the money.
No, this doesn't have anything to do. So the bond system is completely
It's
separate from the
something- okay.
citation or the
Okay.
fines that they pay. And that usually, unless they post a cash bond, which can be applied towards their fines and cost, if they put up a professional bond, that doesn't apply towards those things. So they're really kind of two separate issues, but no.
Could we get, to David's point, this is probably what we need to do tonight, but looking at all of kind of the shared services and costs that we have with the county, and are we getting money
from
that we're
our-
supposed to get or should be getting, a good reflection of our costs and things
We
like.
have been looking into that.
Yeah.
Things
So
that
we-
we
we
do
Something that's a little more
for the
complete with
county, do
everything
they
at
pay
some
us
point.
what we owe,
I think
what
that
they
would be
owe
a
us.
very good idea, to make sure that every one of you are aware of all the different
Right.
things that we do.
There's a lot of moving parts and.
There is. There's a lot of shared services, a lot of shared facilities. Conway covers a lot of costs for a lot of different reasons.
Right.
But yeah, I think that would
Just
be a
an
good idea if this
acknowledgement of
body
that.
had that.
Yeah.
And there absolutely has been. We work closely with the sheriff. The sheriff is very aware of those issues, but yes.
Maybe we could have a committee meeting sometime after we get it
we
all
can.
together.
We can, and we've actually got most of that information together. It's,
I think that'd be good.
And so, and just to kind of clarify too, this is, what would happen is, basically a seatbelt ticket right now costs $75 in Conway.
So it'd be
If you
95.
approve this agreement and this ordinance, it goes up to 90. So we already have that $5 for the city jail
Right,
fee, that's
so
there.
just 15
So this
more.
will increase it by $15.
Yeah,
The
gotcha.
the $5 fee, I heard you say there's a $20 limitation on that. Did I hear you right or not?
That's correct.
Is that a state law? That's a state regulation then? Okay, thank you.
But we're not guaranteed that they'll go along with that next year. They might
Well,
say,
the way
we
the
want to do the per
agreement's written,
diem.
it's basically automatically renewing unless it's terminated, but they have the option to terminate. And
As do we.
As do we,
Right,
that's correct.
right.
We could change it, but we know what's out there. They have passed the ordinance that says, unless we do this, they have the $44 a day that they could charge.
Well, it's net neutral to our budget,
Right.
the way I'm hearing everybody talk. And
Right.
so let's do this.
Is an additional 20, on here it says it's levied an additional $20.
Yes, ma'am. What I put in there
Top of
that
the
we're going to
five?
repeal the old ordinance of $5 and replace it with this
the
particular
20.
ordinance of 20.
That's for the 15 game.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the difference.
So I just thought I'd clean it up that way, so it's just
That's
a
cleaner,
$20.
yeah.
We're not having to use
That's
two
good
ordinances.
accounting. Undo the old and put the new in. It's a nice clean trail.
Yeah.
I make a motion for the adoption of the ordinance. I have.
We gotta wait
Oh,
for
we
three
already-
readings.
Okay, sorry.
You want to do the waiving?
How about the motion to waive 3 readings?
I'll
Second.
waive the
Second.
3.
Have a motion and a second to waive the 3 readings. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Passes 8 to
Sheila?
0.
Make a
Move for
motion
adoption.
with the
Second.
emergency
emergency
clause.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to adopt this ordinance with the emergency clause. Any further discussion or questions? Mr. Clausen?
And just so you know, Bologna, Greenbrier, everybody's doing the exact same thing at the first meeting of the, or at least it's going to be presented to all the councils.
Okay.
So you know.
Mr. Garrett?
Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
The emergency clause, Mr. Pruitt?
Aye.
Mr. Grimes?
Aye.
Ms. Mel?
Aye.
Ms. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ledbetter?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Ms. Isby?
Yes.
Mr. Hawkins?
Yes.
I'd like to say one thing. I'd like to thank the chief and Chuck. I know this has been a long ordeal because I've been hearing about this for a while, and it's not about what everybody wants, but it's the best thing for right now, by far. And I appreciate y'all.
Yeah, they've worked long and hard on it.
Well, it's a delicate situation, understanding the budget constraints and problems and issues that the county's having, but also public safety. And the other thing too, and I meant to put this in there, we've clarified some things about when Chief Spradlin's folks try to book people in, and hopefully made that process a lot easier. And the expectation is when they bring them in, they're ready to be booked in instead of being turned away. It hopefully saves his folks hours and hours standing around or having to take them to get medical attention that they don't even want. So hopefully we've addressed that. So we took that an opportunity to hopefully, like I said, streamline that situation for them.
Thank you. Those both pass 8 to 0. Our final bit of business tonight is consideration to approve the interlocal agreement that Chuck was talking about with Faulkner County for the jail cost at the Faulkner County Jail. You've already explained it, but
I think
y'all
I
have any
kinda
other
covered
questions
these
about
together.
about the agreement? Okay.
Move that we approve the agreement.
It was just the
Second.
last
We
thing.
have a motion and a second to approve entering to this interlocal agreement with Faulkner County for jail cost. Any further discussion? Mr. Garrett?
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Passes 8 to 0. That's all the business we have tonight, unless someone's got something new and exciting. With that, I'll take a motion to adjourn. We're adjourned.
Somebody will open the building for us on Saturday.
Already got it covered. Yeah. Did you get the link